And we are live. Black fatigue. This is what everyone has been talking about. What is black fatigue? I've just heard about this. I'm intrigued. I've been watching a couple of videos, a couple of reactions to what people have been saying in regards to black fatigue. I'm here with JM, and we're going to be talking about black fatigue, guys. What's going on, JM? How you been, bro?
Not too bad, bro. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. I cannot complain. I cannot complain. Without further ado, let's get to this video that we're going to be reacting to. Okay, just hold on a second. Let me just play this video here.
So, TikTokers have decided to hijack the term black fatigue to describe their racism. Here it is.
The woman who called a 5-year-old a racial slur. My first impression after watching the video, a little bit of white trash. I have to be honest, the kid was 5. I have worked with 5-year-olds for the last 15 years. Absolutely everything they do is out of pocket. They're like little unhinged drunk people. Nothing they do makes sense. A 5-year-old is capable of rifling through somebody's bag and taking things that don't belong.
Hold on a second. I can't hear anything. You can hear the video?
Yeah, I can hear it.
I can't hear anything. What the hell's going on? Hold on a second. Let me load this again. Just give me a sec. So just hold on a second, bro. What's going on here? Let me just put this back up on the screen again. I couldn't hear anything.
So, TikTokers have decided to hijack the term black fatigue to describe their racism. Here it is.
The woman who called a 5-year-old a racial slur. My first impression after watching the video, a little bit of white trash. I have to be honest, the kid was 5. I have worked with 5-year-olds for the last 15 years. Absolutely everything they do is out of pocket. They're like little unhinged drunk people. Nothing they do makes sense. A 5-year-old is capable of rifling through somebody's bag and taking things that don't belong to them. Ask any kindergarten teacher. But I realize why so many people are wanting to defend this, because black fatigue is real. I think society as a whole is there. We are just so unbelievably fed up with the ghetto ratchet behavior, entitlement, the victimhood, that they want to praise this woman. But what she did is not praiseworthy. But also on the same hand, please remember that every day that us white people get on this app, we get called racial slurs every single day. So if you don't want to be called a racial slur, you also have to stop calling people racial slurs. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth.
I have more videos. She's not the only one trending under black fatigue. Here it is.
If I'm not allowed to blame you for all of my life's problems, then you're not allowed to blame me for yours.
When I first got on, before I got on TikTok, I thought that racism was only white people being racist. I was so wrong. It makes me sad because there are so many black people that are racist. And this black fatigue, it's real. We're tired of it. All these dear white women, dear white people.
Black fatigue is real. Everybody is tired of black people, but it's 2 specific types of black people that everyone is tired of. Number 1, everybody is tired of loud, ghetto, and ratchet, and violent, and mean, and angry all the time. Everybody is tired of them. Nobody wants to deal with them. Even other black people do not want to deal with these people. You know when you see them in public, you know when they're going to give you attitude at the CVS. Everybody knows it and they want to avoid it. The second group of black people that everybody is tired of is this sort of like fake black bougie intelligentsia who kind of like walks around telling everybody how they're supposed to think or speak or act. when it comes to anything black. These are the most privileged black people in the world. These people have built enormous platforms and have so much money, and yet they are still perpetual victims all the time.
That was Rob Smith. Rob Smith, while talking against black people.
What do you
Yeah,
take
shout
from
out.
those? What do you take from those clips?
Sorry, bro. We got 8 people watching. Shout outs to you guys. Welcome to Solution Podcast. Yes, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I'm saying, what do you take from those clips?
What do I take from those? Oh, from what I've been, because I've seen black people talking about black fatigue and saying the same thing that black brother on this video was actually saying, which is we are tired of bad black behavior, so to speak. What do I take from these from the clips that I've just watched is that they are basically saying that the bad behavior from certain black people they are tired of. That's what, and they are going to speak out against it. That's what I've taken from it. They're saying things that I don't. It's like if we're gonna bad behavior, there's bad behavior from everyone, but that's what that basically. So we are tired of black bad behavior or bad behavior that black people are responsible for. We are tired of it, and we're going to speak out against it. That's what I took from it.
Okay. So I find this whole black fatigue thing very problematic for a number of reasons. Number one, it's perverting an actual term that was used as a book that was written years ago by a black author, and she brought down black fatigue as actually black people being fatigued at enduring or facing anti-black racism and the continual struggle of non-verbal and non-verbal, passive and non-passive microaggressions that black people have to face.
So that's where the term comes from. That's where the term comes from.
It comes from. And she wrote a book about it.
All right.
So I find it I think it's very problematic for me that that's been perverted now to be used by people who are essentially saying they have an issue with quote unquote black people. That's the first thing I find very problematic, that it's been yet again, just like the term woke was again used and then was used in an actual meaning that was existed, and then it was perverted to mean something completely different. And also used again against the people that created it. And so I find it that trend I find very problematic. So that's the first thing. Second thing, as you know, the idea of generalizing and stereotyping people, I think, is very dangerous. So this idea of quote unquote tired of black people is very problematic, because you mentioned black people that behave badly and people being tired of black people that behave badly. So when we talk about behave badly, what are we talking about? Are we talking about criminal behavior, for example? So that hasn't been clarified. If we're talking about quote unquote black criminal behavior, it's important to note that black people that commit crimes are, in terms of the global, or let's just go with the US, percentage of black people in America. We're talking about the minority of black people commit crime. Okay. Now, some people argue that black people commit a disproportionate amount of crime, and they often use this statistic. I think it's 13% and 30% of the population and 50% of crime.
They say
Yeah.
55. They're responsible for 55% of the murders, but they are only 13% of the population. That's what they say.
I looked into this because
Mm.
I noticed that a lot of right wing people seem to always throw that statistic out. It's constantly used. So I looked into it a while back.
Mm.
And I realized that those are FBI statistics, first of all. They come out, this is the FBI that puts out those statistics. Guess how the FBI get those statistics?
How?
They get those statistics from um, law enforcement police departments throughout the country submit these statistics. And the interesting part is those statistics are voluntary. So not every single department submits statistics.
Okay.
So if you're only getting, so these are not mandatory statistics that people have to put forward. They're voluntary. So straight away, that tells you right there and then that those statistics are not to be seen as 100% legitimate because they don't literally cover the whole country. They only cover the statistics of places where some of these law enforcement agencies produce statistics. Number two, those statistics are not verified by any outside forces. Okay, and there's been cases of law enforcement, for example, in LA. LA is notorious for misrepresenting black crime because depending on the amount of funding that they would get. So there's been cases where some of these departments have been shown to be essentially lying about the amount of crime, generally speaking, which obviously disproportionately could affect black people. Also, another key element here is it's not a clear reflection of the real crime statistics in America because if you look at historically, some communities are much more policed than other areas. If an area is more policed than another area, obviously it's going to produce more higher statistics of crime. If a community is more policed than others, so I've never found. I don't take those statistics as legitimate myself.
I haven't personally looked at those
Yeah,
statistics. I'm gonna do some research on those
yeah,
statistics. That's the statistics that even recently I've heard loads of people
it's
basically.
always used.
It's
It's
always the
always
one.
used. Yeah,
It's always the ones that they quote. Yeah.
yeah. So that's why I made a point of checking it out because I thought this was interesting, and I found out. The key part is the fact that they're based on statistics that are voluntarily put forward by police departments. So you can have departments that are not being that are not putting forward these statistics, and that could be reflected negatively. So I thought that was quite interesting. And also the link between over-reporting crime and funding is also interesting as well. So that these are interesting.
It would have been
Oh,
good to have Elijah here because Elijah is an American, so he's closer to whatever is going on out there in America in terms of these type
yeah,
of situations. Yeah. Mm.
but I think um, in the inner cities of America, where black people predominantly reside, crime is more prevalent in other areas. There's no doubt about that. Now,
Mm.
there's many factors that have led to that. Historical factors. We have obviously the fact that these are very low socioeconomically poor areas is one factor because throughout the world there's always been a link between poverty and crime. This is a worldwide phenomenon that's always existed. There's a link between the more poverty and deprivation that exists in a community, obviously the more likely there will be criminal behavior, and that's nothing to do with the racial ethnic background of the community. Go anywhere in the world, go to the poorest parts, and you're going to see more crime. This is just a fact. So to racialize this type of stuff, I find that again very problematic. Also, again, we have a society that has themselves have highlighted disproportionate bias policing. This is something they themselves have admitted to. We also have, particularly in America, documented evidence of these communities being infiltrated by drugs that have been specifically placed in there by the US government. Again, this is not conspiracy theory. The Iran-Contra situation where the CIA, to fund military operations in South America, were doing deals with cartel drug barons who were allowing them to drop off hard narcotics in black areas to fund these operations. This is facts. This is the legitimate facts that we're talking about. This is historical fact. So again, it's very easy to, I always say it's very easy to talk about a situation from the middle forward without going in back in time and looking at some of the contributing factors that led to the criminalization of certain parts of America. I think it's very important to get a full picture before we start stereotyping and generalizing our whole community.
I think I personally, because you so far you've stuck to the crime side of things, the criminal side of things, but this is social media. When I look at social media, I look at how people upload their videos on social media and so on, and when I was watching those videos, what I was noticing, I don't think it's just crime that they're saying they have an issue with. I mean, the lady said, "Oh, they can be racist. They can use racial slurs, and we can't." And me personally, as a Christian, I don't really care because to me these are just sins. That's all this is. That's all it really comes down to. All right. People being racist, people behaving badly towards each other, blah blah blah. To me, every race can do that, and so on. Even if one race does it more than the other, it's neither here nor there. I don't really care. To me, this is just what comes with secular liberalism. But the thing is, I think it's a range of things. I don't think it's just to do with crime per se. I think it's a range of things that they're saying they have an issue with. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking to myself, like, you know what? Because we live in a secular liberal world and everyone has the right to express their opinion and upload their own videos on social media, it's like this was bound to happen. It was bound to happen that people would start looking at each other, okay? Because I'm noticing some tribalism here, as Christianity stopped being the objective moral standard by which everyone lives up to. I've noticed that it's become like almost my color against your color, my race against your race, blah blah blah. So, my gender against your, my view of how my way of how I view gender against your way of how you view gender, and so on and so forth. So it's become very tribal. And what I've noticed in a secular liberal construct, in a secular liberal world, where you're allowed to upload video, for the most part, under free speech, you're allowed to say whatever you want to say. It was bound to happen that people are going to start pointing fingers at each other about how this group behaves or that group behaves or that group is, and blah 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 blah. So is there examples of black people behaving badly? There is. Is there examples of white people behaving badly? There is. But in a secular liberal world where we're supposed to have freedom of speech, people can say pretty much whatever they want to say. So for example, tomorrow we can come with white fatigue. So I could see right now, group of black people basically going online and starting this movement called white fatigue, and they're going to outline all the problems and issues that they think is wrong with white people. And I'm starting to see everything has become very tribalistic. So it's, we're going to point out all the flaws as if we ourselves are not capable of those flaws, as if we ourselves. And when we talk about the black community, as if the black community as an actual community itself has it's under some certain leadership or some kind of moral code. That's not true. That's not true. To me, I just see people behaving badly, because I think everyone is the moral code, as far as the Western goes, to me, is liberalism. And all the ideologies that come under that. That's the moral code, and people are just living out that moral code, and that moral code is immoral, is wrong, is bad, and all of that. And now we are seeing the consequences of it. I'm not surprised that one group is pointing the finger at the other group and so on and so forth. That is what's supposed to happen under secular liberalism. That's what's supposed to happen under freedom of speech and all of that type of stuff. And I think it's going to get worse.
So my issue with particularly when they talk about this so-called fatigue at black bad behavior or etc. So what they've been doing, because I've been looking into this on Twitter, what they've been doing to justify this so-called black fatigue is they post videos of bad behavior that happens to be being done by black people. So they will show fights and things like that, and they will scour the internet. Some of these videos are years old, by the way, and they'll publish these videos. Say, look, this is what we're concerned about. This is why we have black fatigue. And what's so ridiculous about doing that? Number one is if two black people are fighting in an environment, what is there to suggest that other black people would look at that situation and excuse it? I don't know about you, Nelson, but when we've been out, if you're out and about and two black people are fighting, we don't stand there clapping our hands and say, "Yeah, that's it, you go."
No.
We're concerned, and we're like, "This needs stop fighting," or
we try to.
Let's call it. We wanted to. We don't want to see that. So, and we're black.
Yeah.
So again, this idea that this black bad behavior is somehow endorsed by quote unquote black people is so racist, it's unbelievable. This idea that you can look at two black people fighting and somehow attribute that to black people as if we're all this group that endorses. And what's ironic about this, Nelson, is that there's other communities out there where there is quote unquote an ethnic crime grouping. So, for example, if you look at the Italian mafia, that's generational crime where there's leadership, there's tradition, there's unity. There's an argument you could say there's such a thing as Italian crime because there's a structure there. There's some order there. It's not it's not random violence.
Yeah.
There's other groups too I could mention where the crime in the community is very structured. In the Chinese community, crime is very structured.
Triads, yeah.
Right. So we don't the black community in America don't really have that. It's very localized and it's very self-destructive. So there's no benefit. See, this is the thing. With a lot of black crime that happens, it doesn't benefit the community. You see my point? There's no benefit to the community. Which again, in other communities, the crime does actually benefit their community. It actually benefits them in some way. In from what I see with black crime, it benefits the individual that's doing it, and that's it. It's not benefiting quote unquote black people. So this idea of stigmatizing black people that do crime as black crime is very, very problematic, and it's very it is actual a form of racism to do that, to somehow attribute crime that's done by black people to the black community as if the black community are cheering and promoting this type of behavior. Black people in their neighborhoods don't want people shooting up the place. That's not something that they want to happen. So yeah, I find that very problematic.
What about because I know we're touching on crime, but I've heard, because it's not just white people that are saying this. I've watched loads of videos because I went to a couple of black YouTube channels and with full black panels, and I've been watching this for the last few hours now, and they are agreeing with them with what these white people are saying, but what they're saying is it's like this is not the entire black community. This is like this ratchet behavior and criminal behavior is coming from mostly the new generation, and and they've touched on the breakdown of the family that's causing this type of stuff, and blah blah blah, right? So I've watched, and they're not disagreeing with what white people are saying. What they're saying is, yes, but this is not all black people. And it's like, so yes, we can talk about the crime and all of that, the crime element, which I'm going to research further as far as whether black people really do commit 56% of the of the murders, and they're only 13% of the population. But to me, it's like, why, if black people themselves are saying, yeah, we have a problem in the black community, and when these videos come out of black people doing these bad things, it's black people that are uploading these videos, and again, take away from the crime element, it's all types of other things, it's fighting, ratchet behavior, and blah 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 blah, and they're not going against it. I watch these black American channels; they're not going against it. They're saying, yes, there's a problem. There's a problem in the thing, and some of them are saying that they're proud that the white people are coming out and speaking out against it.
Yeah,
To
I'd like
me,
to address that. Yeah.
Hold on. To me, as a Christian, of course, I look at all of this as nonsense. And I know why this is happening on a deeper level. But just hearing from people that speak purely from race perspectives, and just watching what they say, black people are also agreeing with them.
Right. So it's important to note also that within the black diaspora in America, there's different ethnic groups. You have black people that have much more, I guess you can call, foundational to the Americas. These are black people that have a history going way back to the inception of America. And then you have immigrant groups. So the black also, but their parents were immigrants. And sometimes you'll find that some of those immigrant groups, they don't really have a kinship with black Americans for one reason or another, which I'm not going to get into here because this would be very long-winded. So there's some friction between the indigenous black population that go way back to the inception of America and these immigrant groups, especially of recent times. There's been this little kind of diaspora wars going on. So sometimes when you see some of these videos of quote unquote black people agreeing, it's important to know that these could be black people that already have an issue with black Americans and will use any excuse to kind of jump on the bandwagon of disparaging them. Because I've seen that myself. I've seen immigrant black people who are immigrant with American accents who you'd assume were black Americans, and then when you go into their background, you'll see that they're actually of immigrant background. And some of these immigrant backgrounds have a problem with, for example, if you look at Nigerians, okay, Nigerians have got specific slurs, disparaging slurs for black Americans. For example, akata. Akata is a term that they would use to disparage a black American. So if there's already that existing issue, yeah, some of the immigrants, Myron Gaines is a perfect example. Outwardly, someone would look at Myron and think, oh, that's a black American.
I never, I never thought of
however,
it.
yeah.
I never thought of that.
Myron is a perfect example. He only outwardly could be perceived as a Black American, but as we know, he has complete disdain for Black Americans. He uses constantly racial slurs. So this is an example of someone, and ironically, he's actually jumped on the Black fatigue thing as well.
Are you surprised, bro?
Yeah, exactly. He jumped on that straight away. So when you see some of these Black people out here endorsing this type of language, it's important to be aware that these are not Black people who have any affinity with Black Americans. To the contrary, they have an existing hatred for Black Americans. So I wouldn't take those videos that you're seeing as somehow. And also, we all know, Nelson, that there's a cottage industry, unfortunately, that some of these people from immigrant backgrounds are doing now, where they will position themselves as anti-Black, as Black but anti-Black, to create a platform where they know that they can be the little avatar for white people to kind of live vicariously through to push racism.
Myron,
again, perfect
Myron
example of what we're talking about.
of that, yeah. Can I just
So
get your reaction?
yeah, I agree. You know, just knowing that saying such a thing will garner support from anti-Black white people, basically.
Can I just get your reaction to this, bro? Because I found this very interesting. Because I wanted to know, what is the Black community in America? And I hear what you're saying about, you know, immigrants coming in and already having an issue with Black American culture and not necessarily agreeing with them or liking them or whatever. But like, for example, these guys, they as Black American get, put it this way. But I just want to get your quick reaction to this, so you can kind of let me know what you think of it. Yeah.
Black people experience when they're tired of negative behavior that seems to drag down the community. But we're also going to look at the bigger picture. How do we move forward from this fatigue, and what's holding us back as a group?
JR, I think you got feedback on your mic.
That's Corey. Corey, just mute in between.
Okay.
All right. And what's holding us back as a group? We're going to have a real discussion, and I want everyone to participate. Don't hold nothing back, y'all. Don't hold nothing back. Let's make sure we go ahead and have this discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and run this clip just to give you guys an overview of the conversations that's been had thus far and that's been spreading across the media. Here we go.
Is the thing. Newsflash. White people don't want to live around ratchet Black people, and Black people don't want to live around ratchet Black people. I mean, it's nothing like going to the Walmart on a Sunday morning and then you see the Bonnet Crew walk in. Loud, obnoxious, the kids are everywhere, in every aisle, unattended, and that's anywhere you go, no matter what. They're highly emotional, highly sensitive. You can't say nothing. You can't even smile and hold the door for them because they'll look at you like you're crazy. And always the victim of something. Either you stepped on a shoe, you looked at them wrong, you told them good morning. They're never happy, they're never satisfied. And you wonder why normal, good Black people move out of the hood as soon as they start getting successful.
There's a growing sentiment, most recently, of individuals who are proclaiming they do have Black fatigue. And you don't have to be a non-Black person to have Black fatigue. What does that phrase actually mean? Essentially, Black fatigue is a growing weariness of the actions of the quote unquote Black community. But it goes deeper than that, because we are in 2025 now, and we are being judged based on the content of our character and not the color of our skin. But the interesting part is, the lie that's been sold to the Black community in particular is that the color of our skin dictates the content of our character. That's why in the Black community, sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, you are acting white, when they're talking to someone like myself who doesn't act the way most people would expect a conventional Black person to act. In their minds, there is a correct way to act Black. And the people in your ethnic group who fulfill those very negative stereotypes, those are the ones who are going to essentially drag down the collective whole. And that's why there's individuals who are Black who do and can have Black fatigue, because they see how damaging it is to see the worst of us attract all this negative attention that then unfortunately gets ascribed to the entire race all too often. But what's unfortunate is here in 2025, now we have to contend with the fact that there's people who are so sick and tired of seeing those negative aspects, those negative individuals in the Black community attracting all this attention. That's what is spurring this Black fatigue.
So there's this term that's going around called Black fatigue. And what Black fatigue is, you are tired of certain Black behaviors in the Black community that needs to be addressed. It is literally making you tired at this point. When it comes to Black on Black crime, upholding things that are not right in the Black community, like baby mama culture and the rap culture that we have now, gang violence, all of these things that are horrible for the Black community. My main one is thinking that you are oppressed in America when a lot of Black people have so many opportunities in America that it doesn't make any sense. There are Black doctors, Black lawyers, Black content creators, Black entrepreneurs, and honestly, it is ridiculous how much Black people have an advantage in America.
What's your reaction to what you've just heard, as far as I know there's problems in the Black community. I'll be the first one to tell you. And again, I don't like the word community because it's not being led. There is no leadership in it for me to call it a community. There is no moral code. There is nothing like that. Now, I know there's problems in the Black community. As far as the problems go in the Black community, do you think that there's a plausible reason for the term Black fatigue?
Okay. So again, I have to make it clear that some of the contributors, I would be very interested to know their backgrounds, because again, I mentioned before, there is this issue at the moment with people from immigrant backgrounds looking for any opportunity to trash Black Americans for their own personal reasons. Okay, so it really is important for me to say that, because some of these arguments are not really completely in good faith. There's a hidden type of issue there that could be driving this type of critique. So I am going to put it out there. And I'm basing that on stuff I've seen as well. I'm just making it up. But however, so the first gentleman that spoke, he made some actual quite interesting points, I thought. And I mentioned before that communities that are socially economically deprived inevitably will produce a culture that is negative, that is degenerate. If you then add this factor, it's almost like making a soup. You could add all these different factors, and then you get the finished product. With the Black community, you have so much ingredients to it. You've got the historical factor which I've spoken about, where it's just socioeconomically very historically poor and deprived, and no opportunities are lacking. That has been historically. I'm talking about historically. That's what these communities have had. You then have things that were imposed on them, like I think you mentioned it a few times and we've discussed it. This whole welfare system that was imposed on them, which encouraged the breakup of the natural family.
Yeah,
the father being encouraged to leave the home, which gave financial incentives to women.
yeah,
That's one factor. You have the breakdown of morality based on the fact that the Judeo-Christian backbone was completely dismantled because people, for one reason or another, abandoned their religion, the church.
yeah.
But the belief in the morality that the Bible gives. Let's just put it that. I don't want to go specifically into religion, but there was definitely over time you saw that eroding from the Black community, where there's certain things that were completely shunned on. Things like also sex outside of marriage, abortion and these certain things, these over time have been now much more accepted because the moral backbone of the community has been eroded away.
Facts.
We then have the rise of a negative music culture.
Yeah.
That originally was a positive influence on the community, but again, there was people that were outside of the community, who actively promoted a negative form of music. So we're talking about the gangster rap now. We're talking about how hip hop went from a very positive art form suddenly in the early 90s to a very negative art form that encouraged and promoted negativity.
Yeah.
This, we cannot take away any accountability from the Black community because they engaged in it. But we also can't ignore the fact that this was a multi-million-pound enterprise that was promoted and pushed because negativity and degeneracy sells, and it sells to communities outside of the Black community. So these degenerate music actually have a massive audience in the white communities of America because sex and drugs sell. It's enticing to people. So that's why that was promoted. So this again, so I could go on and on, Nelson, but the point I'm making is that there's a lot of contributing factors that have led to this so-called ratchet culture that does exist in America, and it does exist in the Black communities, and there needs to be some accountability for that, no doubt about it. But I don't think we'd be doing a true, honest conversation here if we didn't talk about some of the contributing factors, many of which have been outside of the community.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one. As far as the contributing factors goes, it's everything that you've mentioned. From I believe that the destruction of the Black family, the nuclear family in general, that's happening. I think it's happening to the Black community because the Black community is. It's only 13% of the population, put it that way. So you're always going to see it more because they are a smaller percentage of the population. But yeah, I think taking the father out the home, giving women who engage in promiscuous behavior due to the feminist ideology, giving them houses when they get pregnant and so on and so forth, and financing their lives, all that helped to get the father out the house. That I think that was extremely destructive for the Black for the Black community, as far as contributing factors goes. And you mentioned the erosion of morality, which again came about through the feminist movement with the sexual revolution, this idea of equality, abortion laws, and so on and so forth. Yes, all of that has helped, and like you mentioned, even this whole rap music used to be very positive. Fight the power, all of that used to be very, very positive, morally speaking. And somehow it took a turn to the left, and it just went into the gangster route, the sexualization route, and that didn't just happen to rap music. It happened to all genres of music. So to me, all of that was planned. But regardless, and shouts, we got 27 of you guys here listening to this conversation. Shout out to you guys. Welcome to the Solution Podcast, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And welcome to the channel. But to me, it's like, yes, has the system contributed to the breakdown of the family? Yes. Has the system contributed to the erosion of morality as far as getting rid of the Judeo-Christian religion? Yes, they have. Absolutely. It was planned out and so on. These are the contributing factors. We cannot deny it. But that's that. And you mentioned as well, that doesn't take accountability from us either. Yes, there are external factors helping, working to destroy us. Yes, absolutely. I agree with you. But ultimately, it doesn't change the fact that we still are responsible for making those choices. So, for example, no one's putting a gun to your head to go and get that abortion. No one's putting a gun to your head to have babies out of wedlock. No one's putting a gun to your head. No one's doing any of that. We are choosing to do those things. Are there external factors? Yes, it is. There is bad people working to destroy you. That's a fact. That's just the reality of the world. The world has never been perfect, but it's still our choice. It's still our choice to behave in a moral way, or to not behave in a moral way, and it's still our choice to whether to upload these videos on social media. And this is what cracks me up, JM. And I really wanted your opinion on this, because we are uploading these videos. Every time I upload a video on YouTube, I am conscious of the fact that I am the one uploading this video of me. And it will be on online and so on and so forth. So in a sense, it's no one else doing it. Is we living in an era where people can upload their own videos. So and if people find videos of us behaving badly, it's because we are putting it out there.
So what's interesting, Nelson, is that again, there was we were going back to the videos that the other guy was showing, or some people, white people, talking about black fatigue, and there was an older white woman that said that she thought white people were racist, and then she came onto Twitter, and now she realized, oh, black people are racist. That's interesting to me, because again, what has she done there? She's gone onto a platform where probably 0%, less than 0% of black people, it's certainly globally, are on Twitter. And she's making a judgment based on the interaction she's had on Twitter with black people, to then make this generalized remark that, yes, black people are racist. Can you see how ironic that is? Because there's a woman right now who racially abused a 5-year-old. It's mentioned in the video. There was a 5-year-old special needs boy who was in the playground, and he was messing around in her bag. She caught him, and she
Shiloh
started,
Hendricks, something like that. Shiloh Hendricks.
yes, and she started calling him the N-word.
Yeah, I saw that video.
And she was called out for it. She was obviously called out for it. This lady has a GoFundMe, and there's 500,000 in it, which tells you that thousands of white people have contributed to this GoFundMe to the tune of 500,000. Now, am I justified by seeing that and say white people are racist? No. However, no, well, I'm not, because not every white person has contributed to that GoFundMe. Some have, some haven't. So this the point is that
not every white person
right. So I can't be justified in saying, quote unquote, white people are racist because of that GoFundMe. I can say some potentially are, but do you notice how quick people are to generalize black people based on the actions of some black people online? And that's the interesting part. In terms of Twitter, globally, Twitter usage is about less than 10% of the Earth population is on Twitter. So from that, you can imagine how little American black representation is of Twitter. It's not really representative of black people anywhere, even in America, what's going on Twitter. And as you and I always say, the online spaces are places of, it's the rest haven for trolls. It's a place where people are not even their real selves. And they just go on there to literally give themselves an outlet to say the most vile things anonymously most of the time. So for you to use that as some type of to justify this so-called black fatigue because of things you're seeing online, unfortunately, you're actually highlighting your own anti-black racism. Because if I was to now look at that GoFundMe and make generalized comments that say, look, that proves black people are racist, these same people would have a go at me for saying that. So if it works for you, why can't it work for me? If you're making generalized statements based on the activities of a few online, then why can't we do it too? You see how that works?
Because we are better than them,
There
right?
you go. We're not ignorant, and we're not actually racist. That's the real reason why.
Well, I would disagree with that for one reason only. Can we find racist people in every race? I believe so. I believe so. I've seen it.
Yeah,
But
sure.
to me, it's like, can we find bad behavior, people doing bad things in every race? Yes, we can find it. And this is why I brought up that tribalism thing, because it's becoming very tribalistic. It's like, yes, some black people can behave badly. Well, so some white people can too. So some Chinese people can too. So some Indian people can too. This is a fact. We are human beings, and this idea that one is worse than the other, it's just to me is absolute nonsense. We are all capable of doing wrong, and it to me, I'm looking at the situation. So I'm looking at the situation like everyone's pointing finger at each other as if somehow they are morally perfect or morally perfect above the other one when they are not. Like the videos that we just played of all these black Americans talking, they're basically they're making a comparison, they're making a distinction. They're saying, look, listen, even black people are tired of these black people. I think one of them described them as the N-word and saying that, even we are tired of them because they are the worst of our community and they make us look bad. I'm noticing a trend. I'm noticing that it's mostly the new generation. I think things as the generations go on, people are getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I think when people say things like, "Oh, the black community, this and that and that," I think they're mainly talking about this new generation that's coming up. But then again, this new generation is getting worse in every other single race. So to me, this term "black fatigue" is just another way to create more. To move away from the truth, which is that none of us are perfect. We all do, even though we have every right to criticize each other. But none of us are perfect. So it's another way of moving away from that fact and justifying our own bad behavior. So white people say, okay, look, listen, black fatigue. We are tired of black people and blah, blah, blah. And they have the right to say it, bro. They have the right to say it because a secular liberal world, we have freedom of speech. And just like a black person can go online and say white fatigue, they have the right to go on and say it as well. Does it help us in the long run with this pointing fingers at each other? Or is it going to get to a point where there's going to be an actual physical clash? What do you reckon?
Well, that's what some of these people are talking about now. They're talking about a potentially some kind of race war.
Race war, wow.
Yeah, there's some of these white supremacist types that are saying this is inevitably going to happen. Or we're in the beginnings of one, and it's going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. First of all, it won't be allowed to happen because if there's a race war, all of society will be affected. America will go into flames.
Yep.
So the powers that be would never allow that to happen. Everybody that's engaging in that would immediately be taken off the streets and locked away forever.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't serve the powers that be interest to have because if you engage in a full scale race war on racial lines, the people that are in power will be immediately vulnerable. Okay.
Can you imagine a natural race war? That's crazy.
Yeah, well, it would cause chaos because if everybody was programmed to start attacking people of other races, first of all, you may find some races might get together, and there may be the people that think that they would be kind of dominant may find themselves in a very precarious situation with multiple races going against them. That's the first thing.
But just to kill another person because they are black or because they are
ridiculous.
White, it's like I'm just walking down the street.
Completely immoral.
That's crazy. That's
it's immoral. It's immoral.
Immoral, bro.
Completely immoral.
Wow, that's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
evil. It is evil. But so that's why I don't think it's ever going to happen. But I just go back to the point you were making before. Even I think there's nothing wrong with calling out bad behavior, ratchet behavior.
Mm.
When you start to link it to a racial group, is my issue. That's
Mm.
dangerous, because what has happened in history has shown us that when people are stigmatized and told and suggested that they all behave a certain way, or they all think a certain way, or they all act a certain way, that then could become justification for harming them. We've seen it in history.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
way to get people to harm, to be justified in harming a whole group of people. Look, they
yeah,
all act this way. They all are this way. So now let's treat them all this way.
yeah.
So
That's right.
that's why I'm so against this whole idea of black fatigue and black crime and black this and this whole idea of putting the ethnic group or the racial group before negative is so dangerous, because no one else gets this treatment, Nelson.
Mm.
When in this country, when we had that height of hooliganism, which essentially was white men going out and battering each other, causing mayhem in the streets of our cities, no one called this a white issue. No one did that.
Mm.
I could go on and on about certain crimes and behaviors that never get stigmatized as white issues. Okay, so that's my issue. You know,
That's
if
that's actually
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Is that because the black community refers to itself as a color, and that's the only term that they have to address the actual black community?
No,
Or
no, because everybody does it. Everybody addresses them. Every community seems to address themselves with the, on our identity. You know, when we're asked to identify ourselves, we, on our paperwork, we are encouraged to identify with our race. So it's something that everyone is doing. So
yeah, but
everybody's aware of what race they are.
I've never seen white people being addressed as white community. You know how they talk about black community? Like I've never heard that white community or the Chinese community or the Indian community. It's only for black people that they identify it as black community, which I find that odd. I'm thinking, is that the reason why they didn't, address them as white hooliganism or white whatever? If most of them are white people committing these crimes, are going around behaving in an uncivilized way.
Well, again, it's done by design. If you are constantly categorized by your skin color,
Mm.
it makes it much easier for you to be stigmatized. You see my point? So that is done by design. The black community is extremely diverse. You have within it many communities. However, when it comes to certain behavior, let's talk about the black community. Let's stigmatize them all. Let's talk about black on black crime, which is a stupid term, I find. Because again, this within any proximity to each other, people commit crime. If you're close, if you're living in a neighborhood full of, and the neighborhood is all Chinese, the crime is going to happen in between those two groups of people. So that's the idea of only highlighting black on black crime is ridiculous. Black and black crime happens because they live close to each other, which is the same in any community. You see my point? So why are we? But again, this all goes back to the anti-black sentiment that's always existed within the West. To be honest, going way back to slavery, to post-slavery, where they would justify marginalizing black people by racially stigmatizing them. The perfect example was when there was this incident that made up of a black male that was attacking a white woman or had unfortunately raped a white woman, which was not true. The media promoted it, they put it in the newspapers, and that justified the whole lynching and destruction of a black town. and it was all made up. But because they had already a hatred for what the black people that were prospering in this particular area, just that hatred alone, that they were getting on with their lives and not needing to rely on them anymore, that promoted these lies about white women being mistreated in the media, and then that then led to an assault. So this has always been the case where whenever there's this idea of marginalizing people, let's lie about them, let's stigmatize them, let's create these false narratives, because in that result, this is why I'm so against this, because ultimately it can lead to people being mistreated. That's why I'm even the black people I caution against, even those guys on the panel. Hey, if you want to talk about problems within our community, let's do that. Let's talk about the issues that he was raising. Young women walking around behaving badly in certain communities. I've seen it too. We've all seen this type of behavior.
Yes.
But I'm not going to limit it to just this is a black issue. I'm going to say this is an issue within these certain types of people who lack this certain, they haven't been instructed in a family in a correct family setting, and given the correct guidance. We let's focus on that. Just highlighting the racial aspect of it doesn't make any sense to me, and it suggests that there's something more going on.
Do you think the fatherlessness in the black community, and I hate using that term, but do you think the fatherlessness in it has created a culture that is producing bad behavior, or and shining a negative light on the black community as a whole? Because we all know the consequences of a child being brought up without a father, especially a father without without being a leader or without having leadership. So do you think that the fatherlessness within the black community is causing this type of bad behavior? Because I believe it will eventually cause that.
I think any community where fathers are absent is going to cause negative.
No, of course, this goes for any race. This goes for any race. But what I'm saying is, because we are talking about what is black fatigue. Do you think the fatherlessness of course, it doesn't matter what race you are, there's no fathers there, believe you me, you're gonna have negative outcomes. Especially when the community, upholds liberal secular values, which are very immoral and wrong. But do you think fatherlessness creates a culture? Because a lot of people, one of the things I was hearing from watching one of those shows on YouTube, this one here, they were talking about what is black culture. And to me, black culture, I would define it as liberal secular culture. I don't think there is such thing as black culture. So meaning the type of stuff that they engage themselves in is what we are seeing. For example, music that promotes promiscuity, and this is all across the board. This is not just something that the black community engages with or makes or promotes or thingy. You'll find that in every genre of music, especially the most popular genres. But what I'm saying is doesn't that create a culture? Doesn't that create a bad culture? Fatherless homes.
Okay, but this is the issue, Nelson, I have, because what you've just done there is you've highlighted a bunch of negative things and you said this is black culture. And so my issue with that is church lifestyle is also black culture. There's still black people that attend church.
Mm-hmm.
There's still black people that have quite a high moral background based on their religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
There's thousands of black people that are in a number of denominations, millions, I would add, that are churchgoers, depending on, not just saying one particular church, but just generally speaking, church-going or religious people. Millions of Black Americans are. Is that not Black culture also? Can we not label that as Black culture? You see my point? So I think it's wrong to just look at negative things and say, hey, that's Black culture. No,
No.
that's not Black culture. That's a negative, that's what you call a negative culture. That's what that is.
No. I'm with you. I'm with you on that. What I'm saying is because and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but according to the statistics in America, the majority, because I would say that the ones who are attending church, the ones who who are trying to live by a moral code, a Christian moral code, I would say that they would be doing better. So they'll be doing better than those who are not, and they wouldn't be having the issues that the ones who are living a liberal secular culture, liberal secular lifestyle are doing. So for example, so if 70%, we got fatherless homes are like 70% right now in America, right? So I'm sitting thinking, okay, that's the majority of the community. So the minority is doing well and will continue to do well because they live by different morals, by different moral standards. But the majority isn't. And if the majority isn't, that's what's going to come out more. That's what's going to be more highlighted. That's what's going to be, this is what people are going to see more of, instead of, because in every single community, there is bad and good. There is the degenerate behavior and there isn't in every single community. But the reason why, because what they're basically saying is, the way I'm understanding things is it's more pronounced in the Black community. When you look at stats, and this is just something that I'm thinking about myself. When you look at stats and you see that 70% are fatherless homes, and we know that fatherless homes creates, degenerate behavior. Is it a surprise that we are seeing this more from the Black community as it's being claimed?
So, in 2003, it said that there was 60% of Black children that were living in homes without their fathers.
Wow.
That was easy, right? 61%. Now, there's no doubt that that's going to have an adverse effect on those children. Because as we highlight on this channel, that we believe that a child raised without his father is much more likely to involve himself in any number of negative behaviors.
That's right.
So to answer your question, there's no way we can, we can't sit here and say that that will not have a negative effect on the community if you have loads of children raised in homes without their father.
Yeah.
So that would be completely disingenuous for us to turn around and say that. However, when you look at the factors that lead to that, that could lead to another conversation. You can see we've kind of touched on it, but there's some contributing factors that have led to that, which we shouldn't ignore. Which some people like to ignore because it takes away accountability from other people who may have impacted. I like to show all the evidence to show who was involved in creating that environment, because it's important to be accurate. It's important to have the full story, not half of the story. And we've touched on what the government did.
Oh yeah,
under Lyndon B. Johnson.
Lyndon B. Johnson, the Great Society, yeah.
Right, to help create those statistics.
Facts.
There's no doubt that you can't say there's a correlation between that Great Society that he was pushing and that welfare system that was pushed on the Black community, and the legacy now of fatherless homes. There's a correlation there that you'd be stupid if you can't see the correlation between it. Okay, so there is so this is what I'm saying. It's very important for us to get the full story. Doing so, and this is what annoys me, because when you make these kind of statements, people, you don't want to take accountability, this is you just making excuses. No, we're not making excuses. We're giving you the full picture. Because when you want to be in good faith with an argument, you have to give the full picture. It's the people that are coming in bad faith that will give you half of the situation, that will point the finger at only one group of people. Those are the ones you have to watch, because that suggests that there's some bias going on behind that.
Absolutely.
When you're completely not biased, you give the full picture.
Yep.
You say, yeah, this happened, and this happened. That's what you do. You give the full picture. So yeah, we're doing that. We're saying there's a backdrop to this, there's a background to this, and we spoke about the government's involvement. But we're also saying there's an accountability issue here also. That just because you've been placed in a negative environment doesn't mean that you keep perpetuating it. And that's where, self-accountability has to be promoted.
Let me ask you
within those environments, you still get black men that do make the effort to stay in their father's lives, regardless of what the situation is with the mother. There are black men, and apparently there's studies that have shown that black men are actually increasingly much better at fathering their children, even though they may not be with their mother. There's studies that are showing that black men are increasingly become much more active in their children's lives. So that's a positive that nobody talks about.
Yeah, I heard about that. That. Let me ask you one question, and I'm doing this to be fair all across the board.
Yeah.
Do you think, because the term black fatigue, it's a very condemnatory term, is inflammatory term. Because it doesn't, you're not getting the full picture. You're just, okay, black fatigue. Okay, we're tired of black people, basically. Okay,
but that's by design, Nelson. This is by design.
Yeah, but the thing is, let me ask you this, yeah. Do you think white people or any other person that has an issue with the black community has a right to go on social media and air out their opinion on, or side with this black fatigue thing that's going around now?
Well, my view is this. I'm one of those people that think that even though I don't agree with what you're saying, I do agree that at some point, if you're not inciting violence to anyone or just being hateful for the sake of it, engaging in slurs and epithets and stuff like that, you have a right to voice your opinion, even if I disagree. So yeah, I mean, these people that are on there saying that they have black fatigue, they have the right to do it. Now it's our jobs now, or other people's jobs, to debate that, to refute it, not to silence them, but to refute it, because you're not going to get to the bottom of the issue if everybody doesn't have their say.
And that's my I agree with you 100%, because that is the consequence of living in a secular liberal society, is that everyone can air out these opinions and it's not going to stop. And what I'm noticing is like I said, tribalism. It's because they've abandoned Christianity as the moral standard, and Christianity will tell you, no, it's not about your color. There is nothing to do, because we're all made in God's image. It's you. You're the problem. You're the sinner. You're the one who has to hold yourself accountable. So Christianity will hold you accountable. Because they threw away the Christian moral standard, I've just noticed it's becoming more tribalistic, meaning, oh, it's them. We're tired of these people. And that could be for many reasons. That could be for legitimate reasons, because they are seeing people behave in a bad way and they don't like it. Or it could also be because they are truly racist and they just don't like those people and they don't want to look at the entire picture, so on and so forth. So what do you say about now that Christianity is out the window? I think it's coming back again. I think the people are turning to Christianity more. There's been a study, and I need to do a reaction on it, but there's been a study recently. But let's say now that Christianity is out the window, do you see this becoming worse or better in the future?
Unfortunately, I see it becoming worse. Well, actually, what I see is that there is going to be a situation where there's going to be negative people are going to separate themselves from more positive people, or vice versa. And I'm not putting this on racial lines. I'm just saying that at some point, people who are trying to live better or trying to have their families around more positive behavior are going to have to distance themselves from people who are refusing to kind of try and improve their lives. So inevitably, I think it's going to get worse at some points, but also better for other people who are going to realize that separation is the key, and they need to keep their families away from. So you're going to see more probably enclaves where people who want to live a more upright lifestyle will realize that they cannot cohabit with
Yes,
people who won't do it. And I think that's going to happen in the long run.
but you think it's going to get worse in the beginning?
I do, because I think society as a whole is getting worse, progressively worse, much more degenerate. Everything seems to be tolerated.
Yeah,
There's no accountability, and people are not really. We don't have the people that are stepping up to be the moral authority anymore. That seems to be either people are scared to do it, or they don't want to do it, or they fed up of doing it. And when you have that missing in society, people are not going to get the instruction that they need, and then they just go along with the same mindset.
and that's what I'm noticing, bro. That's what I'm noticing. That's what I'm noticing. And to me, I'll be honest with you, bro, without Christianity that holds the individual accountable, I don't see how. If you throw away that moral stand, if you throw away that way of thinking, I don't see how society. I think this victimhood society. There's two ways of looking at it. The way I look at it is there's the moral, there's the ideology, which is Christianity, that holds the individual accountable, and there is the victimhood mentality, which it's never my fault, it's everyone else's fault. Christianity goes against this way of thinking. And that goes for white people, black people, and so on. And I'm looking at society as a whole, not just society as a whole, regardless of what race. And it's becoming more of a victimhood mentality. Okay, all my problems is because of black people. All my problems is because of white people. All my problems is because of this. All my problems is because of that. And it's never, oh, I messed up. Oh, I did wrong. Oh, I'm capable of doing this too. Oh, I'm blah 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 blah. There's not that. And when that happens,
it's funny you say that.
Yeah, when that happens, I can already see it becoming more tribalistic, more violent, more, this is my group against this group. Morality is completely out the window. No one cares about right and wrong. It's about my group. It's about protecting my group. So, LGB, they'll protect theirs. This will protect theirs. That will protect theirs. And that's it. It's not even about right and wrong. Right and wrong doesn't exist anymore. And that will breed violence. That will breed all types of self-destructive behaviors that's not going to be good for society. That's
It's interesting when you talk about this whole kind of victimhood thing, because I always find it funny when you see some of these right-wing people online complaining about black people and black fatigue. I've got black fatigue. Black people are making their lives so difficult, and etc. And then someone says to them, but hold on a minute, let's look at your community and some of the issues in your community.
Yeah, they don't want to look
at someone, and then they'll say, well, that's not us, that's the Jews. The Jews are behind that.
Yeah.
So they quick to call some people victims or in a victimhood mentality, but they'll never take accountability for the wrongdoing in their own community. That's down to the so-called Jews.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. There's this whole
the reason why they're not reproducing because of the Jews. The reason why the reason why there's so many abortions in their community because of the Jews. Is okay. The reason why it's because of the Jews. Isn't it? Because of the Jews. It's never. Oh shit! Stop. Oh, the reason why I don't have a big family because of the Jews. No, bro. You watch it so much corn. Why is there so much corn in the thing? Oh, it's because of the Jews.
Oh, that's the Jews.
But don't mind me for consuming it. Never mind me, bro. Never mind me, bro. As long as I have, as long as
Why
I'm
is there this huge opioid crisis and fentanyl crisis that affects a massive amount of white people? Oh, that's the Jews with the Chinese bringing it in.
Human beings crack me up, man. So black people are the worst problem on earth. Yeah, right. That's just stupid. But yeah, bro, fully enjoy the live.
That was good.
What's your final thoughts, man? What's your final thoughts? Man?
Yeah, I mean, my final thoughts are basically that
we got 28 people watching. Shout out to all you guys that have been watching this conversation. But yeah, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, my final thoughts are that we need to be careful about generalizing and stigmatizing and stereotyping. I think this is my biggest takeaway. The term black fatigue is an nonsensical term because, number one, again, it's co-opting an issue that black people initially spoke about with legitimate concerns they had based on historical injustices. That the fact that it's been perverted is very problematic, and actually an example of anti-black racism to do that. The first thing, looking at degenerate behavior and then attaching that to blackness is very problematic. Also, I don't agree with that. If you want to talk about negative behavior within a community, talk about it. But this idea of labeling it with a whole racial group is very wrong, very problematic. Yeah, I mean, that's my overall take from this conversation, is that we should not be generalizing people based on race. Basically, that's the ultimate message I have. It's very dangerous because what can happen then is it can lead to justifications for mistreating people. So that's why I'm very much against it.
Well said, well said. My final thoughts, I would say, what I'm seeing here is victimhood mentality. It's always someone else's fault for why things are going wrong. That's what I'm seeing here. Yes, is there problems in the black community? Yes, there is, but no one has ever stopped you from calling it out. If you see ratchet behavior, no one's stopping you from saying, hey, we don't like this ratchet behavior. It's not illegal to do that. You can always call it out when you see it. And like you said, it's good to look at the entire picture, and because the entire picture will give you more context, and will actually it will make you give more of a moderate and responsible answer or reaction to what's going on, to what you're seeing. So, for example, when you acknowledge the fact that Lyndon B. Johnson, the Great Society, feminism and so on, and abortion being legalized, the sexual revolution, when you take all of that into account and see what the government has done in order to break down the family, in order to reduce the birth rate, in order to promote immorality in society, and the impact that has had on different on all communities in the West in general, because the birth rate is going down for everyone. So when you take that into account, and again, I'm not taking personal responsibility away from anyone. Any bad behavior from black people is wrong. It should be called out, just like any bad behavior from anyone. But yeah, racializing it is a bit of an issue, and you shouldn't do that, because to me, this is really a liberal, a secular liberal problem rather than a race problem. This is what it is. But this whole racializing thing, again, it comes with this victimhood mentality attached to it. It's always someone else's fault. It's never us. We don't do anything wrong. They are the ones to blame. It's not us. There's always someone to blame apart from yourself. But then again, as a Christian, I would say, what do you expect when you take away the only ideology that holds the individual responsible, accountable? What do you expect? This is how people are going to behave. And yes, but black people behave badly. Well, so white people do as well. Everyone does. But to make it an issue, this is a black issue. No, bro, this is a collective issue. This is really an issue that's going on all over the West. But anyways, these are my final thoughts. And shouts to everyone, 30 people watching. Shouts to all you guys that have bothered to sit and listen, to this live here. to this discussion. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time, guys. Peace.
Very good.